Welcome to another episode of Routes Through Pokemon Adventures. I'm Shayalock.
I'm Ruby.
And together we are a father and daughter duo journeying through the Pokemon series of video games, the Anime and the Pokemon Adventures Manga. Last episode we detailed our journey in the video games from Goldenrod City to Ecruteak to take on the 4th gym and earned our 4th gym badge. And now we need to catch up in the anime and manga. And so this week we will be covering only one chapter of the manga. It'll be Volume 9, Chapter 107, Gligar Glide. And then we will be covering 6 episodes of the anime, starting with Episode 162, Season 4, Episode 3, all the way to Episode 167, or Season 4, Episode 8. But before we get started and all that, let's catch up on what's going on in our lives. Alright, so, during our last recording, we were doing it on a Friday, and we realized it was Friday. So as soon as we were done, Ruby and I went back to our games to go tackle Union Cave, because we had been talking about going back there forever. And it turned out we needed surf anyway, so we couldn't have done it until we got surf. So now we had the perfect opportunity to go in there, and I thought we needed to go down the same place that we always went down, but it turns out that there was another ladder or whatever that went deeper across the little pool of water that I didn't know about. So we went down there, rushed as fast as we could to find the special beast because it was getting late on Friday. I did run into some battles, which I won't spoil yet because Ruby hadn't done them yet. The only thing I'll say is that it was a cool trainer, male and female, so we got those again. And then but we both did have to fight the trainer at the end. And I forget what she had. Was she like a Nidoran or something?
Nidoran? I thought it was more like,
Poliwhirl?
Poliwhirl, yes.
It's Poliwhirl. That's right. I don't know why I was thinking Nidoran. Anyway, doesn't matter. But then we go surfing down there, and we found... Lapras! But, it's just kind of cool, because in Kanto, the only way to get Lapras is you get one from one of the people that work in the Sylph Company building, when we're fighting all the Team Rocket through there. We can't catch Lapras in Kanto, because the Pokedex entries in Red and Blue talk about it becoming extinct or near extinction or something.
Okay.
Because they get hunted or something. I don't remember what it was. So again, they continue the fact that they're rare by the fact that we can only find one, but this time we actually get to catch it. Because I don't think there are more Lapras in Johto, based on the fact that we had to do this special thing. I could be wrong, because I don't actually know, but the situation here seems to suggest heavily that they're not common.
I'm guessing you can't go back another Friday and catch another.
Ooh, that's a good point. I wonder if you can. Probably not.
Might as well try.
Yeah, we want to fight the trainers down there anyway and finish exploring.
That's fair.
Anyway, the other thing that I was excited about this last chunk of time is over the course of Halloween and a little bit beyond, they had some new costumes for like Froakie and Rowlet, and I caught a bunch of them, and I knew that there were shiny versions out there because people would post about them and stuff, but I didn't really expect to find them myself. And we had a weird incident one night where your mom and I had to go, like, we were going to go stop at a store after picking you guys up from an event, but we forgot, and so we drove all the way back home, and the things that your mom needed to get were for somebody else, for your grandma's birthday on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we could just wait and get them some other day. So your mom and I went back out, which is like it's like almost half an hour away, and went to the store and got the stuff, which actually turned out to be good because it took longer to find the stuff than expected. So it would have delayed us getting home, and everybody would have been getting cranky in the vehicle. Plus, I wouldn't have gone in because I would have stayed with all of you guys in the vehicle. And me being out actually helped us find some of this stuff. So it was actually really beneficial. But also, of course, I was playing some Pokemon Go while I was there. Because there is a gym there and a Pokestop, I think.
Never waste a trip to town.
Right. When you live out in the country, you can't waste those trips. And, of course, I was catching as many as Zorua as I could, because I want a shiny one of those too, which I still do not have. But I was catching some Froakie, because I thought having a black Greninja with his costume would have been really cool, but I never got that. But I did get a shiny Rowlet in his costume. Yay. So that was super exciting, because I really like Rowlet. I really like Decidueye, really. And I last night, I finally evolved him because I was using a lucky egg and made 2 new best friends and all that stuff to maximize my XP. And so, yeah. So that was really fun for me. And now this month, I know we get to look forward to this month of recording because this episode will come out in December. I get to look forward to them introducing Safari Balls to the game. It's something to do with catching mighty Pokemon, and I forget what mighty Pokemon are, and I gotta look it up and stuff. But anyway, they have a Safari Zone event happening in Japan, and then it'll happen globally like a week later or something like that. I don't remember. And I have my ticket for it, so I'm all excited about it. But yeah, I think that's all I have to update in that realm for now. Alright, so it is Volume 9, Chapter 107, Gligar Glide. Alright, so we left off with Gold having dealt with DJ Mary and Whitney and getting Sudowoodo. And he technically won, even though nobody really won, but he won because he saved Whitney, his competition.
Mm-hmm.
And also managed to move the tree that was blocking everybody. And so for his reward, DJ Mary signed a bunch of autographs, which he apparently sold and got some money, so he can go to the game corner in Goldenrod City. And there he's amazing everyone with his pool skills, until the disguise falls off of a Pokeball with Abos sitting in it, who's running around the pool table to make it look like he was doing well.
He was like running around like he was in a hamster ball or something.
Yeah, so Gold would use this pool cue and hit it, but then the ball would go all over the place, knocking balls in everywhere and curving in ways that seem impossible, because it isn't possible, because it's actually just a Pokemon running around in there. So he gets kicked out. And I thought this was really weird, because he actually is good. We've seen him. Like, when he shot the Pokeballs around on the rocks to get both him and Silver's Pokeballs with the Ursa Ring, Teddy Ursa situation.
Yeah.
So, like, we know he has good skill with it, so why was he faking it?
He did say some people can't take a joke, so...
Yeah, I have a feeling he was just being funny. Like, I think he was just having a good time. Because, yeah, it doesn't make sense that he would have to cheat like that. Anyway, Gold then gets a phone call from Professor Elm, who checks in on all 6 Pokemon, Abo, Expo, Polibo, Pseudobo, Sunbo, and the egg. He tells Gold to keep a really good eye on the egg, and so we could automatically assume right off the bat that something bad was about to happen to it.
Yep.
You tell the main character to be careful with something, that's about to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Gold leaves Goldenrod City and decides to sleep under a tree, dreaming of what powerful Pokemon could hatch from the egg. And so while sleeping, the egg slips out of his arms, and a Gligar swoops down out of a tree and snatches it up. Abo wakes up and notices. The rest of the Pokemon are alert, and Abo tries to wake up Gold, but fails, because Gold is like your oldest brother and does not wake up. And then the Pokedex falls out and identifies Gligar, but without any of the extra information, right? Like, it just has this, like, Gligar, what type of Pokemon, but doesn't have the description stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it shows the whole box for description, but it's just...
Well, it looks just like it does when we see a Pokemon, but haven't actually caught it.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's just game accurate, so that was kind of cool. So then the other 5 Pokemon are going on their own to get the egg, since they can't rely on their trainer. Abo hops up the tree and gets a stinger right in the face and goes back down.
And as he's falling, there's a Band-Aid right where he got stung.
I forgot
It's
about
like, you had no time to do that.
It's just to let you know that there's a wound there. It's like when, like, I don't know if this manga has done it a ton, but there are manga and anime for sure that do things where, like, when a character's being mischievous and stuff, they suddenly have cat ears and sometimes whiskers and things. Like, they don't actually have those in the canon of the show, but it's to show that they are being mischievous now. You know what I mean? So, they do that kind of thing in a lot of the art and everything, just to, like, a shorthand be like, yes, wound. Like, just an easy way to let you know. So Gligar hops down into the water, and Polibo pops out, and also ends up getting knocked out. And then the Gligar hops onto a branch. But it's not a normal branch, because it's actually Sudowoodo, who then wraps the branch arm around Gligar. Then Expo shoots some flame and starts burning up Gligar, which of course does not burn up Sudowoodo, because he's not a tree. He's not grass type.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't burn Sudowoodo, but the egg on the other.
Right.
And then Abel even has, like, a picture where he's stunned and then, like, kind of communicates egg equals food if you cook it.
Yep.
You'd look like a breakfast plate.
Yep. Because of that, Gligar is then freed, because they don't want the egg to cook, and then he hides behind some bushes with the egg, laughing. But Sunbow is up on top of a tree branch, looking down at the mischievous Pokemon, and Sunbow drops onto Gligar's head, which smacks Gligar's head into the egg, and the egg cracks. Uh-oh. The Pokedex mentions that something can be heard and the egg will hatch soon, which is also from the game. So, maybe the crack wasn't so bad, because it's just gonna hatch. So all the Pokemon are watching in anticipation of what is to come, and it's...
Togepi!
And a mad-looking one.
Yeah, because Gold was like, can't wait to see what fierce Pokemon hatches. I'm like, it's gonna be a sweet little Togepi. And then he pops out and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, he's got like narrowed eyebrows and stuff. Like, he looks like almost menacing. It's kind of fun.
And then he starts attacking the Gligar.
Yeah, it twirls on its foot as Gligar approaches it and just headbutts the Gligar in the gut with its spiny head.
Mm-hmm.
And then Togepi is sent hurtling back down.
And lands on its head.
But it doesn't stop Togepi for long as it starts waggling its fingers for metronome.
Yeah, because he jumps back to his feet and then waggles his fingers.
Yep. And the blast knocks out Gligar, and Togepi drops down right onto Gold's face, waking him up. So then, Elm is super excited while Gold is on a video call with him at the Pokemon Center. He wants to know what Togepi can do, and Togepi is now very mischievous looking as he dumps out Pokeballs to play pool, rolls dice, and plays cards. Gold does admit to taking him to the game corner since he was an egg, and Elm claims Gold has turned Togepi into a delinquent. Which is somewhat true, it looks like.
I mean, he's a fierce little thing playing cards and...
This is not Misty's Togepi.
No. No, it is not.
I mean Ash's Togepi. Sorry. So then Gold is told to take Togepi to the daycare center, which annoys Gold because he has to go back south of Goldenrod, which I thought was a cool, accurate thing that they did. It's like, oh, well, now I have to go back to the south entrance of Goldenrod to go to the daycare center because he already passed it earlier.
And it's funny because, like, he's sitting there being annoyed and all his Pokemon are around him, and Togepi's just standing there with his eyebrows narrowed like, yeah, let's go.
So then when he's looking for the place south of Goldenrod, a Magby, a Cleffa, and a Smoochum, and an Igglybuff pop out of some bushes. So these are a bunch of baby forms that show up in Johto. And then Gold sees an old lady, too, which he announces and gets in trouble for.
Then she gets mad and starts whacking him with her stick and said to make up for calling me old, go catch the Pokemon.
The babies.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
And hurry.
Yep, and then after that, they all end up back at the daycare center. Apparently, the Togepi egg had been found by the old couple that run the daycare center. Now, here is an interesting thing. I don't remember if they mentioned that in the manga at all earlier. And I'm like, oh, that's just a cool, like, connective tissue they decided to make. But that's actually in the game. And I forgot about it. I was watching somebody play the very, like, beginning again. And when you get to Mr. Pokemon, which is the first place you have to go... So, like, Elm sends you off, you go to Mr. Pokemon after you go through Cherry Grove City, and he's north of there. And you meet Oak there, too, right? And then you eventually have to go back to Professor Elm, which is when you first run into the rival and all that jazz. But when you're there, they talk about... Because what you're supposed to be delivering back to Elm, because we couldn't remember when we recorded that episode, is the egg. We are delivering the egg back to Elm because an old couple that runs the daycare center gave it to Mr. Pokemon. So then we bring it to Elm, who then, of course, eventually has his aide bring it back to us after the first gym so that we can hatch it. So that's actually all very game accurate. I just forgot about it. I thought that was cool. So then the old lady tricks Gold into helping out by showing him tips to train Pokemon right, so that they can get strong fast. Because Gold wants to get his Pokemon stronger, especially since he knows that Silver already evolved Totodile. Meanwhile, the old man calls someone who turns out to be named Jasmine. They made this big reveal because he was like talking on the phone, and then they're like, he says the name, and we see her picture finally, like it's a big deal.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, who the heck is Jasmine?
I'm guessing she's a gym leader.
What makes you think Jasmine's a gym leader?
She looks like she should be a gym leader. And the revealing makes it sound like gym leader. I don't think I thought it the first time through, but just
okay.
gym leader.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you're right.
See, you think gym leader.
Well, we've also seen clips of people in the anime and things like that, so...
there's probably even some of that going on in the back of my mind that says gym leader.
Alright. So yeah, the reveal seems to suggest we should know who this is, but we don't. Because we haven't played through the game. But she's apparently coming over to see the Pokemon that hatched. Oh, and the old couple mentioned that they had 2 Pokemon. They didn't know what they were, and we just see the silhouettes of them, and they're Togetic.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was talking about how they left... Because when they left their daycare center, there was an egg left behind, which is the egg that is now hatched and is Togepi. So since then, they've been watching all other Pokemon to see if any more eggs ever show up, and so far, no such luck. So, this is suggesting that, like, this is still a new discovery, which I think we get in the game as well, too. Like, eggs weren't a thing. That's why we didn't have them in Kanto, because nobody knew. They didn't know where they came from yet.
Mm-hmm.
But once you start playing through Gold and Silver and Crystal, it's this new discovery. It's like, oh, hey, guess what? Eggs show up. And that's where we end off in the manga for now, so to be continued. Alright, so now it's time to cover the 6 episodes of the anime, starting with episode 162, or season 4, episode 3, Airtime, or Rajioto no Tatakai, Jiku o Koete, Battle of the Radio Tower, Surpass Space-Time.
Cool.
The title Surpass Space-Time, that's interesting. And yes, 3 exclamation points are back. So the gang is having breakfast at the Pokemon Center in Goldenrod City, and they're approached by a producer for the radio tower programs. He wants Ash, who just recently won the Plane Badge, to appear on DJ Mary's radio show. So we got DJ Mary in the anime as well. Woohoo!
Yay!
Brock has heard of the show, and it seemed to me it was because, you know, it was a girl who hosted the show, so of course Brock has heard of it. Meanwhile, Team Rocket is hungry, and then they see a department store. So they rush over to it so they can get some food. But when they get there, they learn they can't go in without an appointment because it's actually a radio station, not a department store. There's a large billboard-like monitor that displays what is being broadcast. So, interestingly, you might actually need to look good for this radio station. Which I make a point of because James makes a comment about how people always told him he had a face for radio, like that was a good thing, but usually that's an insult. It means you don't look good, so might as well have a job at a radio station where people don't have to see you.
Yeah.
But if your face is being plastered super big on a billboard while broadcasting, maybe you do need to look good. So, Team Rocket disguised themselves, because they don't like being told they can't go in places, apparently, instead of just looking for an actual department store. And they disguised themselves as celebrities. Not of anything particular, just celebrities. And they walk back into the building and say they're there to see DJ Mary. So the guard just lets them right in.
Idiot.
Once inside, well, Jesse makes a comment about it too. Like, the whole part of dressing up as a celebrity is acting like a celebrity, because then you are a celebrity. You just have to act like one, and then everybody believes it. So once inside, they're in some little storage room area digging through reels of tape and making a mess of it as they look for anything of real value. So then someone comes in looking really angry, and so Team Rocket thinks they're caught. But it turns out that the guy thinks that they, Team Rocket, are someone that they have been waiting for to show up, and so they rush to get them to where they need to be. Because it turns out they think they are a ventriloquist trio. So Team Rocket pulls out Meowth to be their dummy, as they pretend to be exactly that group, and go in for their interview. And they are just in time to go on live, and should have been there a little earlier to chat with Mary beforehand. This is important for later. When they're introduced, the group is apparently called the Doug Trio Trio. Trio.
Diggly dig, diggly dig.
I thought their name was fun because it sounded just like what the Doug Trio say. Then we go to Ash talking to Professor Oak on a video call, and he explains that the producer called, and so Delia knows about the interview on the radio show and makes sure everyone in town knew exactly what time to tune in. This, of course, makes Ash very nervous. Team Rocket is gorging themselves on boxed lunches, as that seems to be what they're happy to be paid in, because they've been hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say they'll come on again, too, if they just keep feeding them. And maybe we'd keep Team Rocket off the streets and stealing Pokemon at that rate.
I mean, they're not exactly doing a lot wrong. They are posing as someone else.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're making everyone happy, so. Well, except for at one point, but yeah.
So then they overhear the radio, and DJ Mary says the next guest is Ash Ketchum and his Pikachu. That gets Team Rocket's attention. Ash is so nervous he gets everything mixed up, so DJ Mary tells him to imagine the interview like it's a Pokemon battle, and that actually works pretty good for him. And then after the interview, a worker runs back in a panic because the tape reels are all messed up. Ash can't wonder about that for long, though, as they meet the Doug Trio who they thought were great on the air, so they congratulate them and do not recognize Team Rocket in their celebrity costumes. With their dummy Meowth, which Misty even's like, you can hardly tell that it's a dummy. So then Team Rocket offers to demonstrate their ventriloquist act with Pikachu, and Ash agrees. But before that can happen, the producer shows up and needs all their help desperately because the tapes they were supposed to put on were ruined, which was actually by Team Rocket earlier because that was what they were digging through. It is supposed to be a radio drama. Team Rocket, as soon as all this is being discussed, is when they start leaving, trying to disappear. But, of course, they're pulled back because they want them to star in it. And he offers them a 5-star buffet. So, they're like, oh, okay, we'll do it. It requires Team Rocket, Brock, Misty, and Ash as part of the cast, and DJ Mary as the narrator. And all they have to do is just follow the script. Easy enough. Brock is excited for the girls to be captivated by his voice, like listeners out there. Right before the drama begins, we get our Who's That Pokemon hint for the episode, which is, this Pokemon's tail can sometimes get struck by lightning. It's a hard one, folks. Good luck. Anyway, the story of the drama is a fantasy tale, but it takes place in a version of Goldenrod City, like a fantasy version. Ash is the hero returning home aboard his Charizard with his 2 companions. And I thought the costumes for all of them were pretty fun. For, like, Ash and his 2 pals.
Because we get to see costumes as they voice acted.
Yeah, we get to watch the story as they are doing the audio version of it. Jessie and James are supposed to be the king and queen and Ash's mother and father, like his character's mother and father. Only they are actually part of some evil organization that Jessie and James actually end up changing to be called Team Socket as they start to go off script. Now, I did have to wonder, because they're all working on this story together, is this a Team Up Rocket moment? Because they're all helping each other, like helping to get the story done. I'm guessing not, but I thought I'd throw it out there. By the look on your face, I'm going to say no, because it seems to have taken you way off guard.
I don't think so, no.
I mean, I agree, especially where this all ends up leading, but... And
they're not even really teaming up, like...
Well,
I guess they are technically...
Initially, but they start going off script pretty quick.
I guess they're technically working together, but like... One, they're Doug Trio, so they aren't really even teaming up with Team Rocket.
That's actually a valid point. I didn't even think about that angle, because usually on our Team Up Rockets, they know it's Team Rocket while they're teamed up.
And Team Rocket's intentions aren't good from the get-go either, so...
Well, from the get-go, they're just excited for food.
Pretty sure Jessie mentioned...
Well, I'm sure Jessie's always got the bad motives behind everything.
So I don't think so, no.
Okay, sounds good. And I did really like that they had this drama, this radio drama, based off of things surrounding where they put the program together, because it's made in Goldenrod City, and they're basing it off of, like, this kingdom of Goldenrod City stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, so they're taking stuff that they have around them and producing this audio story, sort of like what we've been doing, which I thought was kind of fun.
It is kind of fun.
It was a relatable episode. I also really like the actor that plays Brock is doing Brock's voice, and then he does the character that Brock is voicing, which isn't really all that different for Brock. Like, he just sounds like Brock. But then he also does James's voice, and then he does James doing a different character who is actually acting in the thing. So Brock is doing, like, a few different voices now at this point, because he's doing James, but James as somebody else as well.
And I think James was somebody else, and then James was also the Charizard.
James did Charizard's voice?
I'm pretty sure.
I did not know that. Interesting.
And I think it's fun in the story because when we're watching it, they fall into a pit.
Yeah, that Team Socket planned.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mean, technically Jessie, the voice actress for Jessie and Misty, is the same. Like, doing the same thing that the voice actor for James and Brock has to do. The only thing is, Jessie's character, the queen, just sounds like Jessie. Well, Misty and Misty also sound, so she's still only really doing the 2 voices. Whereas James actually does, like, some more performance, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if he's also doing the little bit of Charizard that we have. Anyway, Team Rocket eventually gets really ridiculously off script as they create a time warp that sends everyone into the future, and then there's a ton more crazy antics, including Meowth turning into a rocket.
Yeah, because he was a bot or something. I don't know. It was all super weird. Poor DJ Mary trying to narrate it.
Yeah. And eventually, they create another time warp, which then brings Team Socket right into that very studio. And it's really just like Team Rocket then, and they're stealing Pikachu.
Mm-hmm.
And they put him in the classic light bulb class container that they like to use all the time. And they just use their basic intro and motto this time around, so nothing special there. So then the gang chases Team Rocket to the roof, and DJ Mary continues to narrate as she's following along. Like, it's part of the story now, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get Pikachu back as Team Rocket was starting to fly off. Then Pikachu uses Thunderbolts to send Team Rocket blasting off again. Ding! And now the gang leaves Goldenrod to start their trek to Ecruteak City.
Right when Team Rocket was blasted off, and then the guy's like, now you're off the air. DJ Mary's like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because it was hard to narrate when she had no script.
Yeah. Jessie, like, put her in that position, too. She's like, well, a good narrator or radio host or whatever should be able to just keep up with changes. So Ash and them all left, but then we get a little follow-up on Team Rocket, and they're hanging out of a tree as a trio shows up and asks for directions to Goldenrod. They have a Meowth dummy, and they're heading out there to be on a radio show.
And they wore the same costumes that the celebrities Jessie and James wore.
But here's the thing. Jessie and James were there right at the nick of time. Should have been there earlier. We had this whole thing where they had their interview, they got to eat food, and they ran into Ash and them, and then they got roped into doing the radio show, so then they had to get all set up for that, and then do the radio show, which went crazy. And all this jazz, and then end up blasting off and hanging out of a tree. And then they're on the outskirts of Goldenrod at that point, hanging in this tree. And the trio finally actually shows up. Now, they do mention that they got lost. So, I mean, like, they have an explanation for why they weren't on time. But, I mean, seriously, they were very late. But, that's it. And our Who's That Pokemon was... Anybody guess? Pikachu! And, for our tallies for this episode, we have... nothing. There was nothing to tally. The intro and motto were all the same. There was no babysitting Brock. There was no one-track Ash. There was no team-up Rocket. There was no irritating interruptions. There was nothing. No new Pokemon. There was nothing to tally this episode. It was so weird.
That's funny.
So, nothing to do there, but it is time to rank the episode. So far, we only have a Goldenrod opportunity and a Dairy Tale ending in that order. So where does airtime go? Does it go... Is it better than the first episode of the season where they get into Goldenrod? Is it better than the Miltank episode out in the boonies? Or is it worse than both of them? What do you think?
I think it's at least better than one of them because it was kind of funny and fun. I think it could probably go to number 1. I don't know.
I personally think it's definitely better than the Dairy Tale ending episode. I mean, there was some fun stuff with, like, brushing up on Miltank and actually brushing them. But I didn't like that episode that much, and it was whatever. But Goldenrod Opportunity, with Whitney's introduction, them being her character of being super lost all the time, the fact that they had the barbershop stuff in the underground, that they had the underground. Team Rocket actually had a really totally different motto in that episode with the food stuff at the grocery store. Like, there was so much
I'm good with
on that one that I really
2.
like that one a lot better.
I'm good with just leaving it as number 2.
Alright, so we'll put it between Goldenrod Opportunity and a Dairy Tale ending. So then our next episode is Season 4, Episode 4, The Bug Stops Here. Or, Mushitori Taikai, Shizen Koen de Geito Daze. Or, Bug Trainer Convention. Got it at the Natural Park. So on their way to Ecruteak City, the gang run into a national park. Or apparently a natural park, depending on what translation you want to go here, it looks like. So, just like in the game, they leave Goldenrod, and in between Goldenrod and Ecruteak is the national park. And this one also has a bug catching contest. And it seems to run pretty much the same as the video game version, which is fantastic. I did not expect it to be so close, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even at the end, the prize is in line with the game, including the fact that you get to keep the Pokemon you catch.
Yeah.
Now, it being a bug catching contest, Misty is super thrilled and can't wait to get started. And by that I mean, she doesn't want anything to do with it. She hates bugs. But then, standing in line to register, there's a Chikorita with a headband and a girl with a yellow and black striped jersey.
And it was funny because I noticed that and I couldn't remember anything, like the name of the like I couldn't remember the name of the Pokemon. I was just like, hey, look! And then it was gone and you're like, what? I was like, and then thankfully it showed back up in a few seconds.
Yep, because it's Casey! In a moment of a rockin' reunion. And Casey is the baseball fan, of the Electabuzz fan, from the second episode?
Something like that.
Of Johto?
It's pretty soon.
It was pretty early on. And it was our second place for a long time, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You moved it down at the very end, but it was really cool to see Casey back. I like it when we see characters again. So then she says she's been on a winning streak since their last match, just like her favorite team, the Electabuzz. So apparently the Electabuzz is doing good this year, because they never do good, according to the information we got in the last time we met her.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Jesse and James are upset because they are not allowed to enter the contest because it's only for trainers under 16. So Jesse and James try to look younger, and it doesn't work. And Jesse is quite upset about her possibly looking older than 16 in a vanity moment.
Yeah, she's like, I shouldn't even have to wear this silly costume.
Right?
I'm like, get used to it. People grow up.
So the contest is televised, like on a giant screen for those that are just sitting out there not participating, which I thought was kind of interesting. And the trainers only get the one Pokeball instead of like the 20 or 30 that we get.
Oh, they only get one?
Yeah, it says you only get the one. But they're able to keep releasing it and getting a new one.
Which I thought was interesting because you could release Pokemon in the game and get the different ones if you caught one you thought was better.
Yeah.
You only had so many Pokeballs because they broke or something otherwise. But.
Sure. But the idea is still like similar since you get to keep one Pokemon by the end to enter into the contest. Also, I just like the design of the bug catching balls for this too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were kind of cool looking with like a little almost dragonfly or butterfly design on the front or something.
Yeah.
And the color scheme. It was cool. I want one. And Misty is, of course, nervous about all the bugs potentially being around in that area.
Because, I mean, they are in the middle of the woods.
Yep.
Lost in the woods.
So then Ash goes for a Weedle during the contest, and Casey gets in there and catches it first. And Misty is scared of all the bugs on the screen, and is then hiding behind a tree during it, even though they're on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then Togepi starts befriending a Caterpie nearby, and so Misty flips out and swats that thing away.
Then she swats it away with her bag, and the Caterpie, I feel bad for it, it was so cute.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Jesse and James dealt with the guy in the Venomoth costume that told them that they were too old. And they took that costume, and so Jesse is dressed up as a Venomoth, and they're out there trying to catch some bug Pokemon, and they lure in a real Venomoth. But when it gets close, it realizes that she is not a Venomoth, and so sends out a stun spore on all of Team Rocket and flies off, and Jessie laments it being rejected. And she had some comment about not knowing how good it could have had it, or something like that. I don't remember. Which I think
like, it should have stayed because I'm so beautiful.
Right, which I feel is like a second vanity moment of the episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll count that one as well. Then Casey has Chikorita, quote-unquote, tackle a tree, but really it's just headbutt. It knocks down a bunch of Pineco, and Misty says that those aren't bug Pokemon, which was going to annoy me. Like, I started to get annoyed. I'm like, come on, don't do another Venonat on me. These are definitely bug Pokemon. I know that we were surprised by that fact as well when we talked about it, but they are. So just let them be bug Pokemon. But Brock chimes in and says, actually, they are a bug type. And I thought this was awesome because it also retroactively helps explain the previous problem with the Venonat. Because Missy says those aren't bug Pokemon. She also was the one to say that Venonat was not a bug Pokemon. She's like, at least you're not a bug Pokemon, or this isn't a bug Pokemon, or whatever. Which nobody agreed with her, Nobody corrected her, but nobody agreed and confirmed that fact. And if Brock had been there, because he wasn't, it was Tracy that was there, I bet you he would have corrected her then too. Because he knows what's up. So I felt that it's kind of like how they added the leaf stone in that one short before the movie to help be like, see, it does happen. With the same exact Pokemon. So I have a feeling like they're doing these little things on purpose, maybe. To be like, oh yeah, people didn't like that we were inaccurate, so let's fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I was happy that Brock put her on the straight and narrow. But she also decides that she doesn't really mind those ones then, because Pineco aren't creepy. Which, I mean, she's already not minded some other ones, like Venonat, strangely, but the Lediba. So then, while Misty continues to watch the screen, Togepi decides to take off and get into some Togepi trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Chikorita is looking a bit exhausted, and then her and Casey run into a Scyther. And then we get our Who's That Pokemon trivia. This Pokemon wears the skull of its dead mother.
I feel like that one's pretty obvious if you have a good memory.
Yep. Back at it, Chikorita and Scyther are battling. During the battle, Ash tries to tell Casey she is pushing Chikorita too hard, but Casey doesn't listen, and is beaten up pretty bad. So Ash and Pikachu taunt the Scyther and get it to chase them. When Casey tries to get Chikorita to try again, suddenly the Pokemon is missing. So then Misty turns to talk to Togepi, and finally notices that Togepi is missing. And just then, Brock sees Togepi on the screen! Because Togepi wandered off into the bug-infested woods.
Mm-hmm.
Togepi finds Chikorita hiding in some bushes and tries to cheer up the grass Pokemon. When Casey arrives, Chikorita wanders deeper into the bushes. Then Misty shows up and also gets after Casey for being so hard on Chikorita. And Casey claims that her Pokemon mean everything to her, and Chikorita overhears that information. With Misty and Brock getting after Casey, she feels sad, and so Chikorita shows up to protect Casey, and gets mad at Brock and Misty. Then Casey and Chikorita have a special moment, learning that friendship is important, and maybe even magical, and that they should be good partners and not just tell people what to do, I guess. The lessons we learned a lot, especially with Ash. Ash ends up disturbing some Beedrill, and so he catches one. But as he celebrates, the ground falls out from under him, and he and Pikachu land in a pit. And Ash is smart enough to know, at least this time, that it must be Team Rocket. And so he calls it a lame Team Rocket trap, which then turns out not to be as lame as one might think, because a hidden cage springs up around him and Pikachu, and the balloon lifts them up and out, and Team Rocket gives us an interesting intro.
Prepare for trouble now, you're behind bars.
Make it double. Now Pikachu's ours. Pikachu plans to get Team Rocket with a shock, but instead, it electrifies inside the cage and gets Ash in some friendly fire. Casey, Misty, and Brock show up to rescue Ash and deal with Team Rocket. Then they have a special baseball missile they fire at the group on the ground, and Casey gives Chikorita a pep talk. And so then Chikorita has an evolution!
Woo!
Then Bayleaf, who was Chikorita, deals with the baseball missile with some fun game version battle music, which then turns into some route music, I think. And with the missile stopped and Ash and Pikachu freed, Pikachu zaps Team Rocket and sends them blasting off again!
Ding!
Ding! Then we get to the awards part of the bug-catching contest, and Ash wins the Sunstone along with his Beedrill. So we have a gotta-catch-em-all moment as Ash gets another Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Then Ash tells Casey he thinks she might have won if Team Rocket hadn't gotten in the way. But what? Like, how? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe because she's wasted time to help save him or something, but that's what got Chikorita to evolve in the first place, so, like, whatever. She says she has Bayleaf now, so she's happy. She's not dissatisfied with how it all turned out. But since Ash apparently thinks that she would have maybe won if it hadn't been for Team Rocket, which makes no sense, Ash decides to give her the Beedrill he got and won. So we also have a gotta give him up moment.
And because the colors were black and yellow like her favorite team.
That's true. That was part of the reasoning. And he does claim it's because she helped get him out of the clutches of Team Rocket and stuff too. And then after the narrator, right before the credits can start, Casey quickly tells the audience not to forget to root for the Electabuzz. And our Who's That Pokemon? It's Cubone!
Shocker.
We had no tallies last time, but now we have 9. This one had all kinds of stuff. Because we have a Rockin' Reunion with Casey. We had 2 Vanity moments. We had some Togepi trouble, where Togepi wanders off when Misty isn't paying attention. We had an interesting intro. We had some friendly fire with the zapping in the cage, which was great. We had an evolution, with Chikorita evolving into Bayleaf. Gotta catch 'em all, Ash gets a Beedrill, and gotta give 'em up, Ash gives away his Beedrill. Now it's time to rank it. Well, I think it goes above a Dairy Tale ending again, because it's just not... I don't feel like that's going to be a very strong episode throughout the rest of the season, honestly.
Yeah, probably not. But this episode was really fun with Casey showing up.
Casey showing up was awesome. We had a lot of cool tally things that made it enjoyable. So I think it's probably better than Airtime, which was the episode we just covered. I'm still not convinced it's necessarily better than Goldenrod Opportunity, but maybe.
I mean, it's really good, so I think it does belong in the top 3, but...
Because this was also super game accurate in a lot of areas, too, which was cool. I think I'm going to put it underneath a Goldenrod, but definitely above Airtime.
Sounds good.
So our new number 2 a second ago was Airtime, but now our new number 2 is The Bug Stops Here. And so then our third episode, Season 4, Episode 5, Typecasting, or Usoki wa doko ni iru? Or Where is Usokie?
But with the exclamation point
Usoki.
and a question mark.
Maybe it's Usoki. Probably Usoki. Yeah, that makes sense. So where is Usoki?
With an exclamation point and a question mark.
I'm guessing Usoki is a Pokemon.
Probably.
And we will find out what that Pokemon is soon. So Ash and Co. need to cross a river. But a typhoon hit, and there's a group of people rebuilding this particular broken bridge. And it'll be back up in 6 months. So then they find a guy in a boat and wonder if he'll give them a ride across. He says he will if they can find him a pseudo-wudo. So, now we have finished Goldenrod. We've had the national park with the bug catching contest. And now we have a pseudo-wudo that is technically blocking their path.
I mean, yeah, I guess in a way.
It's sort of, in a way, blocking their path.
I mean, kinda, I guess.
Like, it's not literally. Not right there in their face blocking it, but they need it to be able to get across.
Yeah, I mean, technically it's the river blocking their way, but they need it to, like you said, cross. So.
Yep. So, again, Usoki, probably a Pokemon. Probably Pseudo-Wudo. I don't know what Usoki means. I understand the name of Pseudo-Wudo.
You understand the name of Pseudo-Wudo?
Yeah, I know why it's called Pseudo-Wudo. Like, I get the joke of the name. That's a pun. Well, this whole episode is going to be about what type of Pokemon it is, but we can get right into it. Pseudo-Wudo is not a grass type. It looks like it should be a grass type, but it's a rock type, right?
Yes.
So it appears to be what it's not. Now, pseudo, not spelled the same way as Pseudo-Wudo, but pseudo means fake. Like, it appears to be, but it isn't really. Wood-O is just wood, with an O at the end. So it appears to be wood, but isn't really. Because it's a rock. It's a pun. It's a joke.
So
it's a pseudo-wudo.
It's a fake wood.
Basically.
Oh, fake widow.
Yeah. That's his name. And I think it's a funny name. I like it. I like the name of Pseudo-Wudo because of what he is.
Interesting. I didn't know any of that.
So anyway. Oh, I already finished all that page.
I mean, there wasn't a lot left on it for this episode.
No, I know. So before that, Team Rocket was cooking food in the fire of their balloon. But it was taking too long. So they turn up the flame and end up crashing because of it. So now they also can't cross the water, but they overhear the gang chat with the old boatman. So of course they plan to find the Pseudo-Wudo, and since it's a rare Pokemon, they would use it to get the old man to cross them over the water, but then they would also keep it so they could give it to Giovanni.
That makes sense, I suppose.
Team Rocket's so sneaky. So the gang is looking around, and we have a Psyduck sighting, as he pops right out, like he likes to do. And then Misty says he can help look. And he finds one right away. He finds the Pseudo-Wudo. But Misty just sees trees.
Even though I think they mentioned that it looked like a tree.
Yeah, I think so. While she's oblivious, Pseudo-Wudo hilariously tries to hide behind another tree. But as it is moving, Misty realizes it must be Pseudo-Wudo because she sees it moving.
Stupid.
And she never gives Psyduck any credit for being right and finding it first.
Nope.
Thanks, Misty. You're a real nice lady. Sudowoodo flees, and the gang chases. Then they come to a clearing where two researchers are arguing. The guy, researcher, says that all the reports say that Sudowoodo is a rock type. The girl says that they could be wrong, and it is probably a grass type.
I like how she says they could be wrong, and so she just wants to find out. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
True. But
the guy is right.
But there's, like, the way he's talking, it sounds like there's a ton of research on the fact that it's a rock type. Like, it's not just, like, one person's report or, like, 3 people. Like, a lot of people have, like, looked into it and be like, yeah, no, it's a rock type.
Yeah, but if it's something she doesn't believe, go ahead and go look.
I mean, sure, there's nothing really wrong with that. But she seems very, very confident that they're wrong.
Oh, okay.
And like, again, you can find out for yourself. As long as you're not going to hurt anybody or anything like that, sure. Go knock yourself out and get the details yourself. If you really feel like you need to know firsthand. There are some things that I feel that way too. And then there are other things where I'm like, is it? I don't know. They say it is. And for now, that's good enough for me because otherwise it really doesn't affect me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like a Sudowoodo, they say it's a rock type. Maybe it's not. How often do I run into them? Seems like not very often. So do I really need to know? No. I'll throw water at it. If it doesn't work, then I'll know that maybe it's not a rock type. It doesn't matter that much. I mean, like, because I agree with you. You can go ahead and look. And she didn't say they were wrong, but she seemed pretty confident that it was probably a grass type. So, they all end up working together to look for the Sudowoodo. Ash and them and these two researchers. But before, I guess, that, they all introduced themselves, and I thought Brock was going to go crazy on the girl again, like he tends to do, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't. So then I thought, well, sweet, we're safe from this episode. But we weren't. Because as the conversation continues, Brock chimes in and wants to work with the girl and do some research in the field of love. Which then Misty grabs his ear and drags him off in a babysitting Brock moment. So then Ash uses Noctowl to scout around, and it finds Sudowoodo. So Ash uses Chikorita to fight Sudowoodo, who does a fake vine whip and a fake razor leaf, and which was kind of funny because he just had some vines that he'd picked up and is like whipping them around, and then he like threw dead leaves at her.
The dead leaves was hilarious.
I thought it was so good. But then the Chikorita uses a real vine whip, which Rock is also weak to grass, not just water. So this should have been super effective.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not. And then Sudowoodo is able to do a real vine whip because it can mimic attacks. And then Sudowoodo taunts them hilariously. So Ash brings back Chikorita and sends in Totodile. When Totodile uses Water Gun, Sudowoodo gets nervous, it runs away, and that's because it doesn't like water. Which means it must be a rock type. Because the grass didn't do anything, but water does, so it must be rock.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, too. The anime is consistent here. Because you remember Tunnel Vision. Do you remember Tunnel Vision with the Onyx Tunnel?
I remember the Onyx Tunnel.
What did James use when they got in there the first time? Victory Bell, which is a grass type, and it should have been effective. And then they get bashed in and kicked out, and so what do they decide? Well, they don't have water-type Pokemon, but they need them, so they'll still Misties. Because apparently grass doesn't work against rock. So dumb! Alright. Now that I'm done with that, we can move on. So anyway, the Sudowoodo ends up falling inside a Team Rocket pit. And they think it might be a ground type. The researchers and Ash and them think that Sudowoodo might be a ground type using Dig for just a moment because it went underground suddenly. But then a net draws it out and we get an interesting intro.
Prepare for trouble because we're in cahoots.
And make it double right down to our roots.
Always like a little rhyming.
Yeah, me too. And it turns out Team Rocket are disguised as trees. And Meowth is a stump, which I thought was funny. Because he's smaller. And Team Rocket gets away with Weezing's smokescreen. So then Marie, which is the girl researcher, is devastated, thinking that they'll never find it again. And Brock rushes in and says if they don't, he'll leave his friends and dedicate himself to studying with her. And then Misty shows up for some more babysitting Brock, with a stronger solution this time. She uses a giant mallet and smacks in his head.
I love this one. I think she should keep doing this one.
The ear pulling just wasn't enough anymore, I guess.
I mean, it wasn't. He keeps going on, so...
And then we get our Who's That Pokemon trivia. This Pokemon can steal the heat from its surroundings. So then Team Rocket brings Sudowoodo to the old man, and the guy isn't sure if it is a Sudowoodo. And then he thinks it doesn't look healthy, and so James is going to give Sudowoodo some water to refresh it. So he pulls out... What does he pull out?
It was a watering can, but it was this fancy
A squirt bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Which is how we get Sudowoodo. Yeah, it was like a Squirtle squirt bottle. Mm-hmm. Because squirt bottle. It was funny. Maybe it even said Squirtle bottle. I don't remember, but it was funny. Anyway, when he pulls that out to clean it up and refresh it, Sudowoodo isn't so keen on that idea. And so he runs away. And the gang is still looking for Sudowoodo, and Pikachu finds it. So then Brock runs and tackles Sudowoodo to the ground and licks it, claiming to be a friend like a lick-a-tongue. Such a weirdo.
She is.
Oh, Brock. I mean, it makes sense that he would like to taste the rocks. He works with rock Pokemon. He was from Pewter City with all the rocks, so... Let's see. Back at the lab, they decide to do some tests with Sudowoodo, and he won't show the Vine Whip again because they keep trying to tell him to. So Pikachu uses Thundershock, and then Sudowoodo does Thundershock. So now they all understand it uses Mimic. The guy researcher, I think his name is like Pierre or something, gets a hose and tries to soak Sudowoodo to prove that it is a rock type, because it's the fastest way to prove it. But, of course, that scares Sudowoodo again, because if he was scared of a squirt bottle, he's definitely not keen on the hose. So he jumps out a window and flees, and everyone gives chase again. Then they run into Team Rocket, and the old man also shows up, and it turns out that the old man is actually Marie, the female researcher, Marie's grandfather, which is why he was looking for the Pokemon, since she wanted to research it.
Yep. He's such a nice guy. He's helping his granddaughter.
Yep. Team Rocket sends in Pokemon to battle, and Ash joins in, but Sudowoodo catches Arbok and slams it down. And then all its sneaky attacks and cowardice and everything, Jessie starts to think that it is the perfect Pokemon for Team Rocket. Which, to be fair, actually makes a lot of sense.
I mean, yeah, they're sneaky and cruel. And...
disguises, all that stuff.
Yeah, disguises, and it changes the sleeves and stuff, so...
After some more battling, Poliwhirl ends up hitting Wobbuffet with a water gun, which hits it into Meowth and Jessie and James, and then up and out, and Team Rocket is blasting off again! Ding! Wobbuffet! Marie learns that the research was right, but the guy also appreciates that she wouldn't just accept it because they learn more about the Pokemon this way. Then the old man takes the gang over the river. Team Rocket is climbing up a cliff, and James grabs a branch that is being held by Sudowoodo. And Sudowoodo lets go, sending Team Rocket falling to their death.
Death.
Yes, death.
They never die.
No. And, let's see. Oh, another weird note about this episode. The opening and closing credits actually used the theme song and the scenes from Johto Journeys, our first season from Johto.
Yeah, that was weird.
I mean, it still had the cold open at the beginning, before doing the credits, but it used the old one. I was like, we were partway through it, and I'm, like, staring at you, like, what the heck? And you're like, what? Oh, what?
Yeah, because it played on, and I started singing, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. It says Johto too much.
All the rest go back to the normal one. I don't know why this one was off like that. It was weird.
Yeah.
And our Who's That Pokemon? Anybody guess? Because that one's kind of a tricky one. It's Gengar. He's the one sucking up heat.
Yeah, that one was surprised me.
Alright, so, Our tally this time is Broken Bridge 1, Babysitting Brock 2, and an interesting intro. And now it's time to rank the episode.
Oh, I suppose. I felt like it was pretty good, so it's better than a Dairy Tale ending.
Agreed.
But I kind of like Dare Time a lot, so maybe right there?
I'm good with it.
Alright, that's where we'll do it.
Poor Dairy Tale ending, just getting pushed down further and further. It's going to be our new roll-on Pokemon.
Yep. Probably.
Alright. Then our next episode is Season 4, Episode 6, Fossil Fools. Or, Kodai Pokemon Paku, Arufu no Iseki. Or, Ancient Pokemon Park, Ruins of Alph.
Ooh.
And now, with Sudowoodo out of the way, the gang can now detour back to the Ruins of Alph, just like in the game. So we skipped the Ruins of Alph before. We went from Violet City right down, working our way to Azalea without stopping there.
I mean, it is kind of weird to go back to the same place over and over, but for anime, so.
But the game does have that loop, right? So when Sudowoodo leaves, you can get back to Violet City, and before that is the Ruins of Alph, which you know very well because you like to keep going over there.
I haven't gone over there that many times.
And so that's just kind of cool that we detour over this way. Which they even mentioned that it is a detour in the episode, which I thought was also cool. However, in the game, that's where you meet the Unknown. We've already met the Unknown from another place that kind of looked like they could have been the Ruins of Alph. They even had the symbols on the walls, but that wasn't the Ruins of Alph. It was just some place. Because this is the Ruins of Alph, apparently.
I guess.
Now, the Ruins of Alph did have a connection to fossil Pokemon as well, because we had to put that Kabuto puzzle together to be able to get in there and unleash some of the Unknown.
Yeah, that was kind of fun.
So, they at least have that. And the reason they go on this detour is because Professor Oak had asked them to, because he meets them there and explains that. And then it turns out that the guy running the whole operation there was once a student of Oak's at the Celadon University. Now, I'm trying to remember. Is Celadon University actually a thing in the game?
I don't think so.
Because it's something that exists in the manga. We see Celadon University there too with Erica and stuff. And now he mentions it in the anime as well. And I'm almost wondering if it's that building where we get Eevee, where you can go in the back and the front, which also had the programmers and stuff.
It could be.
I wonder if that's supposed to be Celadon University. You know what? I think there was actually like a class board up there somewhere. So maybe there is. Interesting. Alright, anyway. So it turns out this guy that's running it made a discovery that he's not ready to get out into the open, and so he wasn't really thrilled that Oak brought some friends along. But Oak's like, they won't tell anybody, you'll be fine. And so this guy, his name is Foster, shows them around a prehistoric Pokemon park that he's put together, which uses robot versions of ancient Pokemon, as we see a robot Aerodactyl fly by. Before that, though, the tools that they use to clean the fossils, it needs water, and they squirt, like it shoots out little bits of water to clean them safely. But the water flow has been a problem on occasion lately. So that's something that they talk about. And they talk about that the water comes from a natural reservoir up in the woods. And then we see Team Rocket is draining it and filling water bottles and labeling them so they can make money selling water.
I mean, it's technically not wrong. It's not great, but it's technically not wrong.
Unless there's a law about not taking that water.
Which I wouldn't be surprised if there is.
Sure. So this kind of starts to explain the water flow issues, of course. And then something clogs the hose to their water truck, so they send James to work on it. By saying that we will work on it, quote unquote. Then we go back to the gang, and we see them exploring all the fossils that Foster has dug up. But then they see Ammonite and Amistar come out of some water in the park that he put together. And the gang is, of course, sure that they're robots too, but Foster does not confirm this. And as soon as they say that and he doesn't say that they are, I'm like, oh, they're not robots, they're real.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that they weren't.
Well, they draw it out a little bit, even Oak being like, no, it can't be. But it's especially special for Oak because finding one of their fossils or something was or seeing one was one of the things that inspired him to become a Pokemon professor. Yes, it turns out that they're real, and the gang cannot believe it and freak out, which I thought was weird, since they had a whole encounter with Kabuto on that island in the Orange Islands. And these aren't Kabuto, I know. But they're also an extinct fossil Pokemon that are obviously not extinct.
People really got to check if things are actually extinct or not. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, but also Ash has run into Ammonite, Amistar, Kabuto, and Kabutops before all that in the Orange Islands because he fell into that pit where he found the Togepi egg.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all there. And an Aerodactyl, which is what got Charmeleon to evolve into Charizard. So, I mean, like, there shouldn't be a big shock.
I forgot that they actually met him.
And it's funny, too, because, like, some might say, because almost everybody that was there basically got their... Basically, they were told that they were just dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had fallen asleep because of Jigglypuff, and they woke up, and Jenny's like, oh, it was all a dream that doesn't exist. Which makes me wonder if Jenny's part of some big cover-up, but whatever. That's a whole other conspiracy theory. But Ash isn't part of that, like, false belief, because when they run into Todd Snap, the photographer, he has a picture of the Aerodactyl with Ash in its clutches, and they remember that. So they didn't buy into it or weren't around for the lie from Jenny. So, like, you can't argue that they didn't know or don't remember these Pokemon.
That's fair.
So it seems all very strange that they're all freaking out about it. Anyway, it turns out something is causing these ancient Pokemon to start coming out of hiding from wherever they were hiding. And then we come back to Team Rocket, and James finds out what clogged the water hose. It was an Ammonite. So I think we can all figure out why they started coming out of hiding. Because they were down in the water, and the water is being pumped out. Which also makes me wonder, how long has Team Rocket been up there? Because Ammonite had to start coming out and showing up in the park for the guy to call Oak, for Oak to come out, for the gang to come out. So it has to have at least been a few days, if not like a week or so.
Interesting.
Right?
I wonder.
Which would suggest Team Rocket's had to have been... Because they're the ones... The story suggests that they're the ones that causing the Ammonite to leave. Which means they've had to have been doing this before he even met these stupid Pokemon in his park. Not stupid, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, just weird timing. There's some holes in the story. Jesse and Meowth want James to just toss out the Ammonite. Because they don't know they don't realize the importance here. But James knows it is an extinct Pokemon, so it's super rare, and therefore worth money. So now Team Rocket is going to use their water pumping hose to suck up all the Ammonite instead.
I mean, is that really wrong? I mean, they are rare, but I don't see how it's technically.
Yeah, if they weren't wrong in trying to snatch up all the Magikarp in the water in the Orange Islands episode, then this really isn't wrong either. The whole point is to catch Pokemon.
Yeah. So.
Which we'll come back to that by the end of this little episode here. So then this is where we get our Who's That Pokemon trivia. This is the pre-evolved form of everyone's favorite Pokemon. And then back with the gang, we get a second round of the show telling us not to catch certain Pokemon. So I told you we'd come back.
But like...
Because they're like, oh yeah, these Pokemon, they were hidden and now they're disrupted and we don't want people to come out here because then they'll try to catch all the Ammonite and like this is one of those times where you should just let them be. And I'm like, does anybody know what the point of the video games are? I mean, seriously.
I don't know. They're all idiots.
So weird. Anyway, while discussing how Foster found these Pokemon to begin with, one of the other researchers shows up and says the water pressure has now completely stopped. So the gang rush out along with Oak and Foster to discover the issue. Ash tosses out Noctowl to scout ahead.
Which, like, there's no point for Noctowl to be out in this episode. Like, no point.
Yep. I'll cover a little bit more about that in a second, too. Or maybe I can do it now. Here's the thing. He used Noctowl last episode. He used Noctowl here, which ended up not even to have a real good point, but they wanted to make a show of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, in the next episode, Noctowl gets used a lot, and the plot of the episode made it seem to me like why we saw him a bunch the last two episodes, and using him even when it was pointless, was to be like, hey, let's give him a last hurrah, because he's about to leave.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
But spoilers, he doesn't, which is good, so they faked me out.
Because, like...
I was so sure they were building up to him leaving.
I felt like they were going to make him leave for some stupid purpose, too. Like, oh, you can't have a shiny Pokemon. No.
So Team Rocket is filling up their entire truck full of the fossil Pokemon, and Noctowl, of course, sees this. Then it flies back to Ash, which, like we said, doesn't do anything because everybody's already headed up there anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, there's something going on at the reservoir. No kidding, you're already headed up there. Who cares? And Team Rocket is loading their balloon when the gang show up, and so Team Rocket launches into their motto with an interesting intro, and it concludes with an outstanding outro.
We've caught Pokemon and it wasn't much trouble.
With a bigger tank car, we would have caught double.
Team Rocket has finally done something right.
We've got plenty of Amistar and loads of Ammonite. Now here, let's take a moment. I think we need to discuss the whole modified motto thing, because I think we need to change it up. So there's been a few times where the outro has been sort of interesting, and we're like, does it count as for the modified motto? I don't know, because we didn't have a separate category for outstanding outro, right? Mm-hmm. Now we have it. But now that we have it, we also now have a modified middle, I think, or something like that. But here's the thing. If we have a modified motto, which would be the entire thing, that would count, and all of those would count, unless we decide that a whole changed motto means we do not count the rest.
And we just count one?
Right. So we'll have counts for whenever they just change the intro without changing everything, or if they change the outro without changing everything, or if they change two things but not everything, right? But then if they actually change the whole thing and give us like a whole modified motto, we just call it a modified motto. We don't say interesting intro or outstanding outro or anything like that.
I thought I said that and then you didn't like it.
You did, but that's because we didn't have it all divvied up like we do now. So, what do you think about that plan?
Sure.
Alright, so, we're going to have to go back a little bit. Well, I'll definitely have to go back through the first season of Johto, but that doesn't matter right now. But we did have, I think, in the first episode, Goldenrod Opportunity, we had the modified motto with an interesting intro. So we'll have to change that up. So our counts will be a little different on the interesting intro, specifically. Also, we need a name for the middle, then. Because it can't be modified motto and modified middle. That's just silly.
Muddled middle.
Well, it could be. Alright, so then, as Jessie explains their plans, she has a catching catchphrase by saying,
"If anyone is busting off today, it's going to be you."
And then they launch some Pokemon for a battle. And then we get another catching catchphrase when Team Rocket is getting away and they say, "This is a blast!" But then the balloon doesn't get too far because they are weighed down by all the fossil Pokemon. Team Rocket is arguing over whether to toss some of the fossils or Meowth. And then Ash sends up Noctowl, who pops the balloon, which causes Team Rocket and the fossils to return to the ground. Then the fossils shoot water at Team Rocket, and so they're blasting off again! Ding! Then all the fossils are able to return to their water, and the gang is off once again. And our Who's That Pokemon? It's Pichu!
Pichu.
Because Pikachu is quote-unquote everyone's favorite Pokemon. Alright, our tally is interesting intro, 1, outstanding outro, 1, and catching catchphrases, 2. And now to rank it. Alright, Fossil Fools. I think it's just under typecasting and above Dairy Tale Ending.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
Because I liked it better than Dairy Tale Ending. Dairy Tale Ending was just a weird episode. I don't know. Alright. So then our next episode is Season 4, Episode 7. Carrying On. Or, Papo ya no Densho Papo. Or, the Carrier Papo of the Papo Store.
With only 1 exclamation point.
That's crazy. They must have been feeling mild that day.
Must have.
So the gang hear noise above as they're wandering like they always do, and see a Pidgey wearing a messenger container and a mail hat. Like a mailman type hat almost, you know?
Wait, were they wandering in the woods?
No, actually not. Not this time. And this Pidgey is being chased by a Fearow. And so just so you know, in case you didn't catch on, Papo is Pidgey. So Ash sends out Noctowl again, this time to help Pidgey by dealing with the Fearow. It ends up hypnotizing the Fearow, and some cool animation, actually. And it makes the Fearow think Charizard is in front of it instead, and so it flies away in fear.
Is that a catching catch?
No, it's just a pun.
I suppose. Should have a mark for the puns. Yours and the show.
We would be at like 1 million already. Now that the Pidgey was being scared by a Fearow and stuff, and as this plot develops, this is where I was sure Noctowl was going to leave. They were going to leave him there to keep protecting the Pidgey from things like Fearow and whatnot. To keep all the Pidgeys safe so they can keep running their business. That was where I thought this episode was headed. Fortunately, it does not. Because, I mean, that's what they did with the Pidgeot, too. Why did they leave Pidgeot?
To protect the other Pidgey.
From?
Firo?
Firo! So I was just so sure that that's what they were building up to here again. Anyway, the Pidgey falls, Noctowl rescues it again, and he has to hypnotize it because it's so distrustful and wouldn't let it get near him. And then after patching up the Pidgey, the gang head into town and see a ton of carrier Pidgey, but none of the others seem to have hats. So, of course, we get the one that wears a hat so we can keep track of that one. I think its name is Ken or something.
Yeah, probably. They all had names that were kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then, like, 3 of them had names that all rhymed, and then the 4th one was the odd one out.
Yeah, I love when they make jokes like I love things, the rhyme, like those kind of naming schemes or whatever. I mean, that's why I named your oldest brother Larry, and you Carrie, and your younger sister Sari, and then Bob. Just kidding. Those names, they're not real.
It's like that TV show on Netflix, Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn. Because they're quintuplets.
Mm.
And the one's a girl, and then her name's just different.
Yeah. Let's see. So the kid apparently works with his grandpa, who runs the Pidgey carrier service. Team Rocket spy on the whole explanation of how this business works, and so they decide to steal the Pidgey for their own Pidgey Express service. Grandpa explains to the gang that the business will actually end once he retires. Like, he's just going to shut it down.
Which is going to devastate the kid because he was just talking about how much he wanted to run it.
Right. But, like, the guy's like, well, it just takes up so much time. The world's a different place, so they don't need me as much anymore. Like, they don't need this kind of business. And I had to miss out on, like, a grandkid's being born and my son getting married because I had to, like, keep this business going. So he thought he just wasn't going to do that to his grandson.
Give him the option, dude. Come on.
Right?
I want to punch people in the face when they say things like that.
Joy calls the Pidgey Express because they haven't received their medicine because the Pidgey have yet to arrive, which they had left a while ago, so that seems odd. So Ash and co, along with the kid, head out to find all the missing Pidgey. After revealing the special blimp mobile that they used to go training Pidgey and to go look for him, we get our Who's That Pokemon trivia. This Pokemon was created in a lab by Team Rocket scientists. Then the gang head out and look everywhere and use Noctowl to help. Team Rocket have caught all the Pidgey that were out, and then they see the twerps coming, and Jesse and James are nervous and launch into a catching catchphrase. If they see our balloon, there's sure to be trouble.
Then we better get out of here on the double.
And it was Jesse who had to do the rhyming on this one. So I thought that was kind of fun.
So it was a catching catchphrase? Did they do the rest of their motto?
Oh, yeah, they do their motto later.
Okay. I meant now.
No, they were just talking to each other right now. Like, they didn't even do the big announcement or anything. They just said those lines, but they were the lines from the motto. But reversed. I mean, different and reversed, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an interesting intro, but it just wasn't part of the whole thing, so I didn't think it would count for that.
No, probably not.
But Meowth has a plan for this and activates some cloud cover. Noctowl is suspicious of the cloud, and even the Pidgey with them, the one with the hat, also seems to detect the other Pidgey nearby. The smoke cloud is choking out Team Rocket. Then Noctowl and Pidgey fly over there and gust away the cloud, revealing Team Rocket, and so they launch into an interesting intro.
Prepare for trouble by backing off.
I'd like to get rid of this hacking cough. Because they are coughing through their entire motto, which does make it interesting, but it's not modified. So then Team Rocket launch into battle mode, but Arbok is up in the air when they release him, and so then he freaks out, and they have to catch him by his tail before he falls. And then Noctowl hypnotizes Team Rocket and their Pokemon so that they are attacking an illusion of the twerps, as we get a "we're off again" moment, as they are drifting off again, because they start falling asleep. Well, not really asleep, but like into a hypnosis state.
That's fair.
No, while Team Rocket is hypnotized, Noctowl and the Pidgey rescue all the other Pidgey. So when Team Rocket realize that they've been hypnotized and all that stuff, they turn on the twerps, but find that all the Pidgey are very angry. And they fly after Team Rocket with Noctowl, and they all work together to peck their balloon until Team Rocket is blasting off again. Ding!
And when they all work together to peck the balloon, I'm like, what the heck? Noctowl should be able to get it in 2 seconds. Because they were all, like, pecking different spots. I was like, okay, whatever.
Maybe they reinforced it after the last episode.
Maybe. We're gonna go with that.
And then, when all is said and done, the grandpa decides to keep the business going and hand it over to his grandson when the time comes. But he just needs to prove that he's, mature enough for it.
Ready, yeah.
Oh, and they first drop off the medicine and stuff and leave. Like, this is done real fast. Like, they don't waste any time here. But, like, she has the medicine and they're flying off, and Brock is like, goodbye, Joy! Like, he didn't have time to, like, fawn over her. We never see them, like, interact. But he's calling out from the balloon as they're leaving.
Yeah.
Which was funny. And who's that Pokemon? It's Mewtwo. Prepare for battle.
Shocker.
He said that when they revealed who it was, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, yeah, it was.
All right.
They did.
So our tally this time is Catching Catchphrase 1, Interesting Intro 1, and We're Off Again 1. Now to rank it.
I thought it was kind of interesting. Wasn't super strong, but it was kind of interesting. Maybe above Fossil Fools? Maybe under it? But somewhere right around there. What do you think?
I think I like this one better than Fossil Fools. I think.
Okay.
Hard to say. Alright. And then our final episode we'll be covering this week is Season 4, Episode 8. Hassle in the Castle. Or Zubato no Yakata. Kiken na Meiro. Or Zubat's Mansion. A Dangerous Labyrinth. In case you didn't know what Zubato was. Zubat. Very different. So the gang is walking along, and it's a nice, bright, sunshiny day, and then suddenly a storm comes out of nowhere.
I thought I knew what this episode was right off the bat, but I apparently didn't.
Right off the Zubat? Or Zubato? So they run to find someplace safe, and just so happens they find a super large castle on a hill, which seems very ominous in the storm. And they head there, and the door knocker is a Zubat, which also makes it seem ominous. But no one answers. Now, keep in mind that there's a Zubat on the door knocker for this castle, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'll have more on that in a bit.
Okay.
Then Pikachu leans against the door, and it opens. So they all enter the dark castle, and it is huge and nobody's around. The storm, of course, continues to make it all seem super scary. And then there's a scream from somewhere deep within. So the gang rush to find whoever is being tortured, and they burst in and find someone getting a massage or like chiropractic care from a Machoke. Another person is getting their arm bandaged by a Spinnerack, which I thought was kind of cool because it's kind of like the Caterpie making a cast for Yellow in the manga.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a Mareep that's hooked up to some pads on a guy and is sending like electrical charges into him, kind of like to help his muscles or something. Just like with your little brother, the one from he got in that accident or whatever. Sometimes they put pads on him to send like pulses into his muscles to help him with his standing.
They did?
They still do on occasion, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Does it hurt?
No, I think sometimes after a while it gets to be uncomfortable, but it's supposed to help like get the muscles firing while they simulate some standing and sitting and stuff. So then a pretty doctor turns to greet them and ask if they all have an appointment. Brock rushes in and begins the flirting. Turns out her name is Dr. Anna, and then an assistant shows up and tells her that they are ready for the Zubat scan. So they go into another room, and a Zubat is flying around, and it has a bow on it to indicate that it's probably a girl, and also different from Brock's Zubat. And there is a screen showing a sort of like x-ray of someone, and apparently the Zubat works like an ultrasound with Dr. Anna's computers, which I thought was kind of nifty.
Mm-hmm.
And Anna explains that they actually use a variety of Pokemon to diagnose and treat problems there, like the Machoke doing the massages and the Mareep doing its thing and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Zubat's name is Mimi, and I love that we have another nickname, but also it made me wonder if the name is supposed to be a joke based off the fact that Zubats use supersonic, because Mimi is the Japanese word for ear.
Fun.
Yup. And then it turns out the reason they're set up, like they have this whole doctor-y thing set up in a castle, is because the owner was a patient of Anna's, and when she moved away, she offered the castle to Anna to use to treat others. Now here's the thing. A Zubat is part of her care. The castle was not originally hers, and yet it has a Zubat knocker. So, like, that seems like a weird coincidence.
I mean, when we first moved here, the doorknob was not a little stick thing. It was a circle.
I mean, yeah, you can change it. I get that. But the Zubat, like, especially with the storm and the ominous feel of everything, like, they were setting up for, like, a scary story, and they had the Zubat there, but now it turns out, like, she works with a Zubat for doctor stuff. Like, I don't know. It all seems kind of weird.
Besides, the owner could have even had it, like, being a patient of Anna's, if they did x-rays and stuff and she thought it was cool, she could have put a Zubat there. Or make it ominous, he or she could have put a Zubat there.
I mean, possibly. Alright, so then, in Brock's efforts to connect with Anna, he throws out his Zubat. Be like, hey, see, we both have Zubat. They can work together. We should work together. Meanwhile, Team Rocket is sneaking around the castle, having snuck in the back door. And one of them even, I think it's James, is like, why do we sneak in the back? And Jesse's like, we're villains. That's what they do. You sneak in the back.
Yeah.
Then they hear a scary monster and see a scary shadow on the wall, and it's just Wobbuffet. Wandering outside of his ball again.
Yeah, that's funny.
Team Rocket then smells food, and so they start chowing down when they find it, and stealing more by putting it in a bag for later. But then Ash and Misty arrive and find Team Rocket. Because they were going to have that food.
Yeah, because the person was going to give him food or whatever.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Brock had left with Anna somewhere else on her rounds. So he's not there, and neither is she. Because it was Anna's assistant that was helping out Misty and Ash. And then Team Rocket runs by, and Anna yells at them, asking if they have an appointment. She's very obsessed with people having appointments here. And so they launch into a modified motto, because all of it has changed.
We have no appointment, but we've been having some trouble.
So prescribe us some ointment on the double.
To protect us from all that chafing and itching.
It might finally stop all of Jesse's complaining.
To eradicate the evils of athlete's feet.
Maybe I can get rid of my prickly heat.
Jesse.
James.
Team Rocket's been scratching at the speed of light.
So give us some salve, or we'll never sleep tonight. Did you notice James is failing at rhyming?
I mean, I might have, but I saw the notes, so...
Can you guess what would have rhymed there? It would have been a swear word.
B?
Yep. I thought that was hilarious, because he even pauses for just a second when he says it. Like, it's not very long, but enough to make it sound like he meant to say something else, but switched it up at the very last moment. Because Jesse does do that a lot.
Just do what?
Complain. Or the other word.
Yeah, maybe I should just tell it to my siblings, so it's not technically a bad word because you're not calling them.
Not appropriate.
But if they're complaining, why don't I just say it? Won't do nothing.
It would do something.
Then maybe they'd stop complaining.
It would for a second, at least. Alright, so then Ash and Misty come running from where Team Rocket had come from, and Team Rocket goes back to fleeing, and Anna goes after them, trying to warn them of something, because they slipped past a part that was blocked. But they don't listen, and so a trap door opens, swallowing Team Rocket, Anna, Brock, and the Zubats. Because the Zubats were both still out.
Because Anna jumped down to help them, and then Brock obviously followed Anna.
And then it closes, and a wall blocks the rest of the path, so nobody else can follow. And then we get our Who's That Pokemon trivia. This Pokemon uses Growl attack to lower its opponent's strength. I'm sorry, this is a stupid clue for you guys, because that's what Growl does, and many Pokemon learn that move.
You should give him a better hint.
This luxurious Pokemon is a favorite pet amongst those in power.
Works for me.
I don't know. I'll give you that. So the Trapdoor gang are all in some underground chamber, and Team Rocket tries to leave through a tunnel, and a brick wall pops up, blocking their path. It turns out they're in a maze, or a labyrinth. But fortunately, Mimi uses Supersonic along with Brock's Zubat, which helps them determine the way out of the maze. Because Mimi's wasn't strong enough to get too far, so they needed both Supersonics.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense.
Upstairs, the assistant explains to Ash and Misty that there is one exit, and so they all go to look for that outside because it's supposed to the maze is supposed to leave somewhere outside. Then underground, the two routes available to the group both turn out to be dangerous according to the Zubat scans. Like there's some traps that they see.
Mm-hmm.
Outside, Ash and Misty find the exit, only it's buried because it's not been used in many years. So they start working to uncover it. Underground, Jessie gets fed up with waiting, and so she chooses a path and asks who has the guts to follow her into the unknown. And she uses that exact phrase.
Into the unknown.
Which I just thought was funny, since you like to do that. Wobbuffet pops out and answers the call.
Yeah, that was funny.
And this endears the Pokemon to her a little bit. But then they rush forward and the wall springs up, blocking the path and nearly crushing Jessie. And she gets mad that Wobbuffet didn't take the fall. He was supposed to be the fall guy. But when one route is taken, and the trap is, triggered or whatever, the other one becomes safe, according to the computer and the Zubat scans. So now everyone can go the other way. Then there's another obstacle in the computer, but there's nothing that they can see in front of them that suggests that there's a problem. Jessie decides she's still going to leave because she doesn't like all this waiting again, even though it didn't work out for her the last time, and asks if Wobbuffet is with her, which, of course, he is. But Jessie turns out to be very mean and thought this through because she was just going to push Wobbuffet ahead of her to trigger the trap, keeping her safe. However, Wobbuffet flies through the air and then lands, and nothing happens, so Jessie runs forward, which means she's still touching the ground all the way through, and triggers the trap, which are two walls that drop down from either side and squish her. Sorry, Jess. Did not work.
I like that she got smushed, though, after, pushing Wobbuffet in.
Yeah, Wobbuffet's such a good guy. Or good Pokemon.
Especially for following her.
Right?
No.
It's like he wants her to like him.
I don't think he cares.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's like a puppy or dog that you could, smack around. Not that, I don't condone that at all. I don't smack dogs around. But, you've seen stories where, they can get smacked around by their owners or whatever. They just don't care. They're still the friendliest thing in the world to you. Yep. The Zubats detect a way out, and Brock is sure that Anna is going to see that they are a perfect team, just like their Zubat. And so then he dreams of wedding bells for them. And then they find a door. Then outside, the group out there have cleared the door, but the door is stuck. Underground, Jessie and James steal the two Zubat, but then they run right into the stuck door, because they thought they had a way out, because the door was right there, but it turns out not to budge. And then outside, they can't open it still, and so Pineco explodes it open, which frees the Zubat, because it knocks Team Rocket back, right? Because they were right next to the door. And then Team Rocket decides to snatch Pikachu, and they run off with him, stuck in a glass case again. Team Rocket tries to use Arbok's Poison Sting, but then Brock has his Zubat use Supersonic, which confuses it, and so the Poison Sting goes after Team Rocket. And then we have an evolution as Brock's Zubat becomes Golbat.
Ooh, yes.
Now, when Golbat uses Supersonic, it shorts out Anna's computer. Pikachu zaps Team Rocket, and they go blasting off again. Ding! The heck? When Brock decides that he and his Golbat will stay to help Anna with her treatments, but Anna says it is too strong, which Brock misunderstands as their love being too strong. Anna readily corrects him and says that she means that Golbat's Supersonic is too strong, and he is crushed. And then they're all saying goodbye, and Brock is crying while Misty and Ash are dragging him along behind them by his backpack, and I think should count as another babysitting Brock moment.
Yeah, obviously it's babysitting Brock.
Well, it was a little different, so I wasn't sure, but
if you're not gonna count this, you can't even, in my opinion, you wouldn't be able to count the mallet.
Sure.
Because, it's different. But, yeah.
Well, part of the reason it was different to me is because of Brock. Brock is usually flirting and then they drag him away. Whereas this, he's already had his heart broken, and it's just...
His heart is always being broken.
Yeah, but it's already broken. He's just lamenting. He's not, flirting or trying to stay this time, it seems,
if they didn't drag him, he would be staying.
This is true. You're not wrong. Alright.
It counts.
And our Who's That Pokemon? It's Persian.
So, hopefully you got it from Daddy's hint.
Or at least the hint that they gave you with the growl attack, because that made it super obvious. Alright, so our tally this time, we have a modified motto, because the intro, middle, and outro were all changed. We have an evolution, Zubat becomes Golbat. We have a gotta catch 'em all, because Brock now has a Golbat, because I decided that we'd count those. And we have a babysitting Brock. Brock is dragged away from Anna and the castle by Misty and Ash.
Woohoo!
And now it's time to rank it.
I think it's your turn, right?
It is. Alright, I did like this one. It was I liked the Labyrinth. I loved Wobbuffet, being like, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah, that was funny.
We had some cool stuff with the evolution and everything. I also like some of the more, this is another, bit of a world-building thing where they use Pokemon to help with, medical stuff, kind of like how we had, wrangling Magnemite and stuff, you know? Mm. So I thought that was cool, but also not my favorite episode.
So it's definitely better than the bottom two.
Yeah. I think I liked it better than Carrying On for sure, actually.
Carrying On?
That's the Pidgey one. So it's better than the bottom three, then. Typecasting and airtime, it's definitely under the Bug Stops Here. I thought Bug Stops Here was fantastic. So it's definitely...
I liked airtime, so I want that.
Sure. And I think I agree with you on that. So, yeah, it's definitely above or below typecasting. Typecasting threw me off a bit with the bickering between the people, especially when it definitely is a rock type. But Sudowoodo was a lot of fun. So, it's got good and bad there. Alright, I'm gonna put it above typecasting then.
Sounds good.
So, because we only had two before, I am going to list where we are at on this one this week. But going forward, I probably won't list them all the time, but I will try to keep an updated list on the Facebook page. So if anybody wants to see where everything had landed, you can always check there. So, we have last place, in 8th place, is A Dairy Tale Ending. And then we have Fossil Fools, then Carrying On, Typecasting, Hassle in the Castle, Airtime, The Bug Stops Here, and our number one is a Goldenrod Opportunity. And I'm not even going to bother with the tally right now because we changed some stuff up and I need to fix it. So I will also try to post those on the Facebook page. So if you want a running tally on that too. And now it's time for us to award a Pokeball for the Pokemon that stood out or seems to have really earned it in this chunk of episodes.
Probably Sudowoodo. He stands out a lot and matches the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of good options here, I feel like, because there's the whole thing with all those Pidgey for the Carrying On. Chikorita evolving into Bayleaf. Oh, and the Zubat into Golbat. But yes, I think I would also give it to Sudowoodo. He was the most entertaining new Pokemon or featured Pokemon. He was kind of a goofy one. So, that means, because we both voted for it, he gets a Great Ball. Just like Miltank in the last section. Now it's time for Pokemon cards.
Woohoo!
Alright, this week I am opening Scarlet and Violet Twilight Masquerade with, looks like Dreepy and its evolutions or something on it. Or maybe it's just the evolution. I don't know. It's Dreepy stuff.
I'm opening Crown Zenith Sword and Shield with Zacian and Zamazenta. My first Pokemon is Larvesta, Fire type. The people of ancient times believed that Larvesta fell from the sun. Tangela, Grass type. Hidden beneath a tangle of vines that grows non-stop, even if the vines are torn off, this Pokemon's true appearance remains a mystery. Baltoy, Fighting type. It was discovered in ancient ruins while moving. It constantly spins. It stands on one foot even when asleep. Galarian Meowth, Metal type. Living with a savage seafaring people has toughened this Pokemon's body so much that parts of it have turned to iron.
It lives with seafaring people? That's cool.
Apparently.
Pirate Meowths.
That sounds kind of cool, actually. Whalmer, Water type. It shows off by spraying jets of seawater from the nostrils above its eyes. It eats a solid ton of wishy-washy every day. Wait, from the nostrils? Above its eyes? I guess it doesn't have a nose. But I think that's how dolphins breathe too, through their Squirty hole.
There's Squirty hole.
Ooh, a reverse hollow giraffe rig, psychic type. Its tail has a small brain of its own. Beware. If you get close, it may react to your scent by biting. And then Luxray, Stage 2, evolves from Luxio. It's a rapid strike, electric type. It's my rare. Luxray's ability to see through objects comes in handy when it's scouting for danger. Steel type. Trainer, digging duo, supporter. Shaman, colorless.
Shaman,
colorless. The blooming of Gracita flowers confers the Pokemon of flight upon it. Feelings of gratitude are the message it delivers.
Yeah, Shaman is like a special legendary thing, kind of like the Mew and Celebi or something. I don't know from where, but I have it in Pokemon Go, and you had to do a quest to get it, and I think I got a shiny one too, because I had to do a quest for that.
Oh, that's cool. Then I got Crushing Hammer.
Nice. Alright. I have Applin, Dragon type.
To my annoyance, that's the chicken.
Yeah, because you were like, you know what type it is? And I'm like, yeah, Dragon. And you're like, how do you know? It's supposed to be a grass type.
Yeah, that just makes sense.
Applin lives inside an apple. When an Applin is separated from its apple, its body loses moisture and the Pokemon grows weak. Nosepass, fighting type. When endangered, it may protect itself by increasing its magnetism and drawing nearby iron objects to its body. Seaking evolves from Goldeen, water type. In autumn, its body becomes more fatty in preparing to propose to a mate. It takes on beautiful colors. Sunkern, grass type. It is very weak. Its only means of defense is to shake its leaves desperately at its attacker.
Pretty useless.
Really makes you sound awesome there, Sunkern. Supporter trainer card. Cook. Heals 70 damage from your active Pokemon. Palafin evolves from Finizen. Ability, 0 to hero. Once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the active spot to the bench, you may search your deck for a Palafin EX and switch it with this Pokemon. Any attached cards, damage counters, special conditions, turns in play, and any other effects remain on the new Pokemon. If you switch a Pokemon in this way, put this card into your deck, then shuffle your deck.
Interesting.
Its physical capabilities are no different than a Finizen's, but when its allies are in danger, it transforms and powers itself up. Oh, interesting.
What?
Well, when I see Palafin, like in that little goofy little short with Greninja and stuff, this Palafin looks like a dolphin. But a lot of times when we see Palafin, he looks like almost like a human-like dolphin, like ready to beat people up.
Oh, yes. I think I remember the short.
But apparently he can look like either one, and he's like weak and just like his regular little dolphin self, unless there's something to make him tougher. Like, we don't have him in the game yet, so I've never seen this, but I didn't realize he had like a couple forms or whatever.
That's cool. I didn't know that either.
I'm very interested in this.
Should do some research.
By catching them. Alright. Tatsugiri. Dragon. Ability. Attract customers. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck. Reveal a supporter card you find there, and put it into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. Tatsugiri is an extremely cunning Pokemon. It feigns weakness to lure in prey, then orders its partner to attack.
Bum, bum, bum.
Alright, I got a reverse holo that is a supporter trainer card. Kirin. Choose one. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon, or during this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX and active Pokemon V before applying weakness and resistance. Oh, that reminds me of something else that we should have said earlier. I pre-registered forever ago for the new Pokemon TCG Pocket for it's the Pokemon card game, but not the same. It's mostly just like to collect cards from the Pokemon card game in a digital form. But you also you can play the game too, but it's a streamlined version, so you only have to defeat 3 Pokemon. There's no prize cards. Weakness only does plus 20 damage instead of double damage, and there's no resistance, it looks like. So a lot of and energy. You don't have energy cards, you only have 20 card decks, and energy, every round you generate an energy. And depending what you have in your deck, it will either just generate the energy if it's a single type deck, it will just generate that type. If it's not a single type deck, then it can flip-flop, and it lets you know what the next one will be, so you always can, like, kind of have a heads up on what you're going to have next to plan ahead.
That's kind of cool.
It's very cool. It's a fun little game. Anyway, I've been playing with that a lot lately, so I just remembered it because we're dealing with cards right now. Then I have a reverse holo Sea King, water type, same card as before, but just reverse holo now.
Cool.
And my rare card is Frostlass, evolves from Snowrunt. Ability, Freezing Shroud. During Pokemon Checkup, put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's, except any Frostlass. It freezes prey by blowing its negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit breath. It is said to then secretly display its prey. And then I have a steel or metal type energy.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think that's our episode. So, Routes Through Pokemon is a Hunterfield Institute production. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other podcasting platforms. So go ahead and like, subscribe, rate, review wherever you find us. You can always go ahead and comment if you want. You can also reach us at our Facebook page, Routes Through Pokemon. I'm also on X at HunterfieldIns, and I'm on Instagram at kinetic_card. You can also reach us by email at hunterfieldmanor@gmail.com. Alright, so next week we will have another chapter of the manga that we'll be covering. Chapter 108 in Volume 9, Quilava Quandary. And then we will have another 6 episodes of the anime. 2 hits and a miss, a hot water battle, hook, line, and stinker, Beauty and the Breeder, a better pill to swallow, and power play. After that, we'll have another episode of anime episodes only. We will have no manga on that one, and then we will be in our 2-week holiday break over Christmas and New Year's before we're back in January with a special. So, stay tuned for that, and thank you for joining us, and we will catch you on the next route. Sayonara!
Bye-bye! Jan. Change your ways, Mortimer. Change your ways.
Those last few words seemed to come from far away as the green light in the room dimmed. Before long, the hologram was gone completely, and the room was plunged back into darkness. Nice try, Evergreen. You predicted some of my responses, but it got away from you toward the end. Should have made the message shorter. I might have actually believed you were talking from beyond the grave then. Mortimer shook his head. He had caught on that it had actually just been a pre-recorded message, likely to prank him in the future, as it was doing now. Probably even programmed to emerge on a specific date, and it was none too hard to predict where Mortimer would find himself at such a time on such a day. Good night and good riddance! Professor Thistle had finished his sandwich on the way up to bed. As soon as he was up there, he crawled under his covers and turned over to go to sleep. It was about 9 minutes to 11 at that point, and only 6 minutes left when he began to snore. And right at 11 o'clock, there was a loud crash in the room. Professor Thistle shot upright in bed and looked around in a panic. It turned out his nightstand had simply toppled over. He breathed deep to calm himself as he set to cleaning up the mess. A sudden chill wind came in, and Thistle thought he heard something behind him. He whirled around to catch whatever it was unawares, but there was nothing there. Then, from across the room, there was a sound that was almost laughter, and Thistle turned to see it. But again, he found nothing. Who's there? I don't take kindly to children sneaking in and pulling pranks. More movement behind Thistle, and he tried to catch sight of the rascal or rascals again. I'm warning you. I'll call the authorities, and I'll be sure to have you charged to the full extent of the law. The room went completely quiet. Thistle remained suspicious and continued to scan the room, but it seemed that perhaps the threat had worked, and whoever was there had left. Or, that was what it seemed up until he reached the end of that thought, and a dark, smoky orb appeared out of a wall and flew straight for the professor. The last thing he saw was a large grin, and then Thistle was flying backwards and, he was sure, to his own death. Then there was a soft huff, and specks of white flew off and glittered in sunlight? A moment later, Thistle felt a creeping chill that soon became very cold, and he leapt up and twirled around in a circle. It was day. There was blinding white snow everywhere, and a large pile of it with a professor-shaped indent. What just happened? Where am I? Then he saw the dark orb again, a stark contrast to all the white around. It was a ghastly, and it was grinning at him. Did you do this? Being a Pokemon, it did not answer Thistle's question. Instead, it let out a small cry and then began to float away. It stopped after a few seconds and turned to look at Thistle. It cried out again and continued to stare at the professor. Oh, you want me to follow you, don't you? Another cry from the ghost Pokemon, and it floated off again. This time, Thistle followed. As they trudged through the snow, they drew closer and closer to a lab on the outskirts of a town. Wait a minute. Isn't this Lavender Town? He gave the Ghastly a suspicious glance. What is your plan here? Are you threatening me? Want me to join your ranks as a spirit, perhaps? Well, my ghostly friend, I am only too happy to disappoint you. I'm not foolish enough to step into that town. The Ghastly rolled its eyes and floated away. Professor Thistle frowned. But then he saw that the Pokemon had glided right by a lab that was familiar to Thistle. But I thought the place had fallen into disrepair. It looks as sturdy as the day I had started my work as an aide there. Myself and Professor Evergreen under the tutelage of that hardy professor. What was his name again? Ah, Professor Redwood, how are things going for you this fine day? Thistle blinked and turned around and found that his old boss, Professor Redwood, was carrying a sack of packages and had just been stopped in the snowy street by a less familiar face. Thistle was sure he'd seen him around Lavender Town back in the old days, but it had been so long ago. And yet, both Professor Redwood and his greeter did not look at all their age. Redwood looked as rosy-cheeked and lively as he had the last day Thistle had seen him. That's impossible, Thistle said. Professor Redwood would be dead from old age by now if he hadn't already died after the experiment. The two men on the street finished their conversation, wished one another a Merry Christmas, which caused Thistle to twitch, and then they went their separate ways. Thistle decided to follow Professor Redwood to the lab. He didn't seem to notice Thistle behind him at all. As they entered the building, two of Redwood's aides stepped up immediately.
Good morning, Professor Redwood,
the female aide said. How are you, Professor Redwood? Said her companion. Redwood seemed taken aback. Ah, good morning and Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
I should have known my two hardest workers would be here even on Christmas morning, though I can't possibly imagine what they have been up to. The woman cleared her throat.
Well, sir, we had realized one of the Pokemon we've been studying has shown a bit more variation than other types, and we think that they may, in fact, be two different species, so we're going over the data.
Of course! And what have you found out?
It's hard to say. Mortimer and I haven't come to a consensus.
I think the variation is simply gender-specific, Mortimer cut in.
Right, and I think there's more to it than that, as the variations between them seem more significant than other Pokemon have shown between genders.
Well then, that is all very fascinating. I would love to take a look at your notes. The woman immediately rushed off to grab them, but stopped short when Redwood continued. Tomorrow. It's Christmas, and we have a party to set up for.
A party? But this could be the most significant discovery of our lifetime.
And we can discover it just as easy tomorrow, but today, let's celebrate. The woman was about to protest, but Mortimer put a hand on her shoulder. Then, as Redwood walked deeper into the lab, whistling a merry tune, Mortimer spoke quietly to the other aide. He said tomorrow, Meadow.
But this is really important.
I know, but you know how Professor Redwood is, especially on Christmas. Meadow sighed.
Yeah, you're right.
Of course I am. I always am. Mortimer grinned and Meadow rolled her eyes. Now, let's get to help setting up for the party. Meadow nodded.
Yeah, I'll be right there. I just want to check on a couple things with the Nidoran first.
With a knowing smile, Mortimer nodded. All right. Don't be too long, though, okay? Professor Thistle watched in amazement at the scene playing before him. He was there in their presence, and yet it was like watching a movie. Nobody saw him or acknowledged him as he witnessed those lost events from his younger days. "I was such a scrawny young man, wasn't I?" he said to himself. "And everything seemed so bright and happy. But I was naive back then. Experience has taught me better." This day turned out to be as prone to betrayal as old Professor Redwood. He greedily kept his secrets, and it cost all of us so much. There was an eerie cry from beside Professor Thistle, startling him. He looked over and saw Ghastly hovering there, watching the scene right beside him. The ghost Pokemon's focus seemed to be on the younger Mortimer, as he watched Meadow go off and collect her notes. "Oh, don't look at me, younger me like that. I know what you're thinking, and yes, there may have been some microscopic spark of interest in that young man's heart for the girl, but it was just respect for work ethic, really. Her and I were two of a kind. We understood the importance of our research." It was hard to tell, but Thistle was fairly certain that the Ghastly's expression was quite cynical. "Oh, mind your own business." The Ghastly grinned. "Why are we here, anyway? This isn't a particularly fond memory of mine, and I'd rather not continue reliving it." The only response Ghastly gave was turning around and looking at the front door. Professor Thistle glanced over his shoulder to see what had interested the Pokemon. The first thing Professor Thistle noticed was that it was already starting to get dark outside. Hadn't it just been morning? The next, and likely what had caught Ghastly's attention, was a man entering the building and wearing an expensive-looking suit. Walking right through Professor Thistle, much to his surprise, the man in the suit strolled by a younger Mortimer up on a ladder hanging some decorations. Another shock to Professor Thistle was finding out the whole lab was now quite festive. It seemed very clear that somehow the little jaunt through his memory skipped ahead a few hours. Watching the man in the suit approach Professor Redwood in the back, Professor Thistle nodded. "Oh, right. I remember that man. He worked for Team Rocket. Turned out Redwood was working with them to experiment on a Pokemon many thought to be a myth. A Pokemon I had been looking for since I was a little boy when it had rescued me from nearly drowning. Redwood knew how important it was to me to meet it again one day, and he had it under my nose the whole time I was working for him." The Team Rocket man stood by calmly, his hands behind his back as Professor Redwood was shouting and waving his arms about wildly. Once the professor began to subside, the man gave a bow of his head. "The offer is more than generous. I hope you will consider our discussion carefully, and I will expect your call before the end of the night. It will be a Merry Christmas for us all, then." "Get out!" Redwood boomed. The man in the suit calmly departed, and Professor Thistle watched as his younger self rushed over to see if Redwood was okay. Thistle shook his head. "That's when Professor Redwood told me it was nothing to worry about, and that the man just wanted something he thought Redwood had. The thing is, Redwood did have it, and I was just too trusting to believe otherwise. Oh, what a fool I had been." After Redwood retired to a private office, Meadow emerged from the back where the Pokemon were stored and studied. Professor Thistle frowned. Had she been back there that whole time? She really had been caught up in her work, hadn't she? Ghastly made a rude sound with his tongue, revealing what he thought of Thistle's theory. Then Ghastly flew off out of the building. Thistle shrugged and turned his attention back to Meadow and the younger Mortimer.
I heard shouting. What was that about?
Young Mortimer shrugged. "I'm not sure. Some guy was in here wanting to secure the professor's help in some kind of business. Looks like he was willing to pay well for it, too, but the professor was livid at the mere thought of whatever it was." Meadow nodded.
I think I know what he wanted.
"What?" Mortimer nearly shouted. "What is it?" The woman looked toward the front doors and then glanced over at Redwood's office. Apparently deciding on something, Meadow headed for the exit.
Come on, I think I can fix this.
She ran out into the cold, and Mortimer watched confused. "Well," Professor Thistle shouted at his younger self, "follow her, boy!" Then, as if he had heard his future, Mortimer took a deep breath and then chased after Meadow. Thistle followed himself. By the time Mortimer and Thistle caught up, Meadow was already starting a conversation with the Team Rocket Man, and Ghastly was hovering just above them. If you can truly do that, if you can get me Mew, then yes, I will reward you handsomely. Mortimer's eyes went wide. Wait, Mew? Professor Redwood has a Mew? The Team Rocket Man eyed Mortimer suspiciously. Is this going to be an issue?
Not at all, sir.
Meadow assured him.
He understands the value of Pokemon as well as I do. He will be very much on board. I am certain.
The man nodded and left, leaving the two aides out in the snowfall as the sky grew increasingly dark. Does Professor Redwood really have a Mew?
Yes. I found out about it 3 weeks ago. At first I had just noticed some notes on his desk, and so I started digging and snooping around.
That's amazing. I have longed to see Mew again nearly all my life. I'll have to go see if Professor Redwood will let me... Wait a minute. You just said Are you planning on stealing Mew for that guy? Meadow shook her head frantically.
No, not at all. I just told him that I would talk some sense into the professor, helping him see how much more he could accomplish with the money they are offering.
Professor Thistle sighed as he watched the two head back into the lab to try and convince Professor Redwood to work with Team Rocket. He remembered all too well the disappointed look in Redwood's eyes as both he and Meadow sided with Team Rocket's offer, and the hurt on his face when he, Mortimer, had shouted at Redwood for being a selfish old fool. He had been hurting ever since realizing that Mew had been so close for so long, but in the end, Mortimer and Meadow failed. Professor Redwood wouldn't listen to reason. He was stubborn about it all and wouldn't even let me see the Pokemon. And in the end, it cost the lives of nearly all his Pokemon. It cost him his lab, and he was killed. He died in the fire all because he wouldn't help Team Rocket with their experiment. So they took it by force, and he lost everything as well as losing out on the money, and so did Meadow. In the end, Mew escaped, but enough DNA was left behind that Team Rocket offered Meadow and I a chance to work on their attempt to recreate Mew. That was a disaster as well, but in that time, Meadow and I had saved up enough to go into work for ourselves. But, well, things were always a bit different between her and I after that. I think Redwood's death had been rather difficult for her. Ghastly let out a cry, and Thistle looked up at the Pokemon and shook his head. Sorry, I don't even know why I'm bothering telling you, a Pokemon, any of this. It isn't as if you can understand. The Ghastly rolled its eyes, and suddenly, Thistle was outside again, and the Team Rocket Man was talking with Meadow. What are we doing back here? You already showed me this, remember? And if you fail to convince him, the man said,
Then I help you steal it. I'll let your guys in the back, and they can take it from there.
Meadow replied. Thistle stared in shock. What? Are you trying to tell... Are you saying she is responsible for the fire? Just as young Mortimer arrived to hear the Team Rocket Man promise Meadow a reward, the scene faded and Professor Thistle was back in his bedroom above his own lab. It was just him, all alone. The Ghastly was nowhere to be seen. So, she had managed to help them. That woman, my partner for a good 41 years, was responsible for Redwood's death and the escape of Mew? That double-crossing, sneaky, conniving... I'm glad you're dead. Thistle was staring up at the ceiling and shaking his fist. I'm glad you kicked it before me, you scoundrel. Thistle shook his head as he started to get back into bed. I always knew she was clever, that one. I bet she still has a nice plunder hidden somewhere in the lab, too. Would certainly make me give this holiday a second look if I were to find that under my tree, so to speak. As, of course, the miserly old fellow did not bother putting a dead tree in his home, let alone adorn it with festive decorations. I'll find your hidden treasures, Meadow Evergreen. Just you wait. Think you can pull a nasty little prank on me and not have any consequences just because you're dead? Ha! I'll show you! The last word turned into a scream of surprise as Professor Thistle found his ankle hoisted into the air, causing the old man to dangle upside down. He was carried right out through his window, and he found himself sailing over the town below. One slip, and his strange night would be over rather abruptly. He looked up, or was it down, to see what was carrying him. Grinning widely, tongue hanging out, and giving off a cry that sounded like snickering, was a hunter. To be continued.